The way humans see death is an ending, a fear, an inability to be in this life anymore, a possible negation of all consciousness, a possible negation of all that you have done in this lifetime, and a possible negation of your ability to be able to carry through what you wish to accomplish in this lifetime forward, whether that be through consciousness, projects, or unhealed relationships. And these are the three main fears that humans have at the time of their death: that they did not finish what they came here to do, that they were not good enough and are not going to continue on in a glorious way into another lifetime, or that they did not have the ability to bring in enough love in this lifetime. And if you contemplate the first three ways we spoke about these things, you will realize that the final three things we said regarding these three topics are pretty much a nutshell summation of those things. Okay, so let us give you the Pleiadian perspective of death, because it is different, and it'll be new, and it will be something that you will need to contemplate for a series of time in order to see and understand that there is great beauty in death. There is great rejoicing, there is great reunion, and there is also great evolution. Let us first start and speak about death from the standpoint of the body. The body is something that you take on when you come and incarnate in a lifetime. It is a combination of many forces. There are some devic forces that actually work with you in your body so that you may maintain and have a body. There are creator forces where you work with creational energies so that you may evolve and heal and create and grow and learn and have relationships with other people. And there are also forces at the heart level with direct connections to the Creator, so that you may always have the place of succor, home, rest, and the feelings that can come through the spirit body of being connected, safe, and loved. For when you call on the Creator answers in many ways. And by Creator, we mean the Creator of all things, the Creator of universes, the Creator of souls, the Creator of the impulses that drive our enlightened planet and all enlightened planets. For there is an impulse that comes through all universes. So, from our perspective, there is a difference in death compared to how you see it. So the body that you come in and take on as a spirit in a body, and you have it during your lifetime, is released. And the devic forces have a lot to do with that releasing, as well as the soul and the higher self. And it is gone through over a period of 3 days after you pass. Now, these 3 days are well known in Oriental medicine. They are called the 3-day bardo window. And there are actually spaces that you can heal in. And there's actually a new healing paradigm that is coming in the Great Shift with the new divine feminine energy, which is the ability to heal in the death bardo. And that is new, and that is part of the upshifts that happen on the other side of the Great Shift, having to do with bringing in setups and profound healing potentials that then become enhanced through the rest of your Earth's evolutionary process. And at the Great Shift, there are profound things that come in. And we will leave that for another day and another subject. So that is how the body releases. It is mostly done not by the human consciousness. The next thing that happens is what is called your etheric energy releases. Now you can think of the body as being the astral energy, if you've heard these terms. The astral energy is all of your feeling nature, and your feeling nature is connected to your heart and the Creator. And so the first thing you would release is your feeling nature, so that you may reestablish on the other side of the veil, when you are out of your body, that relationship with the Creator, which is your primary and fundamental relationship. Your connection to the Supreme Being, or God, or Allah, or Muhammad, or however you want to define Source, whatever your religion. So just because we say these words, we do not disrespect any religion, nor do we criticize or say one religion is better than the other, because they all have the same foundation, a belief in something greater than themselves, and that there is a premise that that Creator actually loves. And that is of the New Testament, where if you look at all of these religions, most of them are of the New Testament. All right, so moving on. So the astral nature is released. It is your feeling nature, and it is released for why we said. In the first day of the bardo, the next thing that is released is your etheric nature. Your etheric nature is your higher self's thinking processes and consciousness, and it is also relating to form and structure. So therefore, it makes sense that that is released. Now you can think of your higher self as holding all of your earthly records of all of your incarnations. So as you are leaving a lifetime, if you should believe in reincarnation, one of many, you would unhook from the higher self, because you are unhooking from that system of remembrance of earthly memory, earthly spiritual memory. So that's what happens on the first day. So it is basically a universal life process. You can think of universal life as the life force you share with everyone at the group level. And we have spoken much about the group level in many of the channelings and the writings that we have on the Wonder of Human Design website, and through the Sedona Journal of Emergence, and on the YouTube Wonder of Human Design playlists. And so we're not going to go into that there. I mean, here, we went into it there. So, the universal life is your group energy, and that is what is released. So that is what happens in the first day. On the second day of the death bardo, it is the heart level and the divine feminine energy which begins to be released. And this is your group relationship at the soul level to all souls through the heart field, which is mostly comprised of divine feminine energy. And your body and your etheric and your spirit body and your interim spirit body are a lot universal life. But the heart field of all of those things is mostly divine feminine. So on the second day, you are basically releasing the heart level of the divine feminine. And what is that connected to? That is connected to the bridges that are between your personal higher self and the group higher self. And the group higher self is actually on the collective level on what you call the human consciousness grid, or the noosphere. And it is around the periphery of your planet. And it is a group collective consciousness. And you are releasing things on the second day of the bardo having to do with that. So it is issues of the heart, issues of personal feelings of self-love, issues of personal feelings of loving others, and issues of personal feelings of loving and communing and being aligned to the Creator, to the Supreme Being. We use that word because of gods and goddesses worshipped in previous epochs of time. For the earth, humans have been on the earth approximately 258, 259, 260,000 years. So there was a lot of other evolutionary periods during that time. And there were gods and goddesses worshipped, as is, well, not so much for younger people because they don't teach the ancient history so much, but in times of Egypt and And Greece and Rome, those are well-known times where they worshipped other gods and goddesses, which were metaphors basically for aspects of the one God. And their minds at that time and their consciousness was different. And they divided those aspects of the Creator into gods to describe principles and qualities of attributes that they felt should be encouraged in that time frame. All right, so because in that time frame, perhaps it was important to have great vigor in war, so they had a god of war. But those consciousnesses are old and gone and changed, and you are in the time you are in now. So you really can never compare the past to the present as far as consciousness goes. And we say this to the many people right now who are very angry over the past. That was indeed the past, and the consciousness of the people in that past was different, whereas the consciousness of the people now is different. So what you should actually do is celebrate that you no longer have the old consciousness, rather than fall back into anger that you had that experience back then, and it perhaps is deep in your Akash, your records of your higher self on earth, and it is active in you now because it is active in the collective for various reasons. So, the best thing to always do in relation to the past is celebrate that that consciousness is changing, and celebrate that you have the connection to the creative force to be able to change your consciousness at any time. All that requires is the willingness and the searching for the divinity within you to do that, and the desire to change. These are fundamentals of all healing. And to come to the Creator with your problem and be willing to raise it up into joy as you heal, and keep raising that vibration until you feel you are healed. All right. So that's a good tip for people who are looking for the answer to rid those old consciousnesses that they keep bumping up into. Okay, so that's the second day of the Death Bardo. The third day of the Death Bardo, yes, many have already figured that out, is releasing what is called the high heart level of the Death Bardo. The high heart level is a beautiful thing. It has a connection to what is called the golden Akash, or the benevolence of the Creator, in the human consciousness grid. And that's where all the good deeds and works of an individual as well as a group working in alignment with the Creator for the greater good of all, in grace, create beautiful creations that are stored up there and are used in healing, both for you individually and when you join in groups and do healing, such as we are the sponsors of the Great Global Healing Party to heal the human consciousness grid, which you can do now for the first time on the earth. And it is a beautiful thing. So the third day of the Death Bardo becomes one of actually rejoicing. The feelings that start to come up in there are a huge desire to reunite with Source and go home and feel the love, and all the love you might have experienced with anyone in the lifetime you just had start to flood into you as a way of saying, yes, you are dearly loved, because that is the Creator's energy. It is a fabric of love wrapped in divine intelligence and for the greater good of all. And that is one way to describe love, that it is an underlying force within creation, and that love is something that flows through you, but that you do not have to create or force within you. And that's a really different way of looking at love. For humans, when they go to pass, feel they have failed in love. They feel that they did not love enough. And they get into a lot of self-judgment over their life and the things they know that did not go so well. But the Creator does not see it that way. The Creator celebrates, and the creative forces and the deviant kingdoms who served your body, and the higher creational beings and angels and archangels that serve the greater good and the Christ impulses, and we'll talk about that in a minute. They are a celebration of you all during your lifetime, uplifting you and saying, go forward, you can do it. You are an amazing creator being. You are an amazing instrument of your soul, and your soul is magnificent because they have connections that make them know that. These other various co-creators that you work with on earth that enable you to have a body and have an incarnation in a body. So that third day is beautiful and filled with benevolence and floods of incredible feelings of joy, of love, of light. For now the light begins to come. The light of the soul, the light of the creative source, the light that is there, that is a kind of like a pathway home. And that is what souls follow. And there are actually, and this one's having a memory of ancient Lemurian tonal prayers that are to remember that light, the light of home. And you follow that light down into an incarnation, and you follow that light back up at the end of an incarnation. And that light takes you out to the far noosphere of the planet, not to be afraid of that thought, but to an amazing space called the field by some people with a capital F. We call it the Supreme Being's creational matrix, just like the movie, The Matrix. But we tend to be techie in our terms. But a beautiful way to describe it is a reuniting with all souls in the fabric of creation with the creative source of the Creator, the Supreme Being, who is behind all forms, all stars, the universes, all universes, and is like the underlying fabric between everything. And it's how all the enlightened planets are able to communicate, because they have found that force and they work with it. And this is how they are able to work in your planet and make changes and upgrades and new evolutionary steps and potentials. And you, as you evolve, will go to another planet and do what we did for your planet, to bring in the divinity, the pathways, the systems, the planetary evolutions, and all those types of far-out thoughts. But we're sticking right now with the idea of death of a human, so we're not going to spiral out too far. So that third day is when the light comes in, and you leave that third day bardo having released any other things that you have a feeling of that were undone. And most of those undone things are the feelings you have when you didn't create in alignment and you couldn't hold the high road in a situation. And everyone has that. That is part of the earth system. It is part of the learning and the growing and the learning to create and the learning to create in alignment. Because within your spiritual anatomy, you actually have you, the individual, and you, the group. And you can think of a life as a dance between the individual and the group. And that dance is tricky, and it is probably the most challenging part. This one has often said, life with nature, other than survival, is actually beautiful and easy. It's the human part that's so tricky. And that's where most people are getting caught up. It's all those human relationships and group human relationships and national group relationships and now world global group relationships that are so tricky. And that's the way it is. But there's a lot of judgment that humans get into over that. So that holds them up in the final day of the bardo a little bit with some feelings that then get released. But those feelings have a purpose, because they allow in your next incarnation for you to pick up things that your soul and your higher self were working on, so that you can then continue to evolve that level of consciousness that you would like to have healing and change in. And you actually are part of the decisions of what you bring in your next lifetime to work on. You, at this third day in the bardo, as you transition through the latter half, make decisions with your soul and higher self in that pathway of light on what you would like to work on. So let us talk a little bit about near-death experiences. For they are never ones that reach the third day, but they reach a level, and they never actually cross over and go into the bardo, but they are going up the central column in a pathway that is next to the pathway of the death bardo. And they have many experiences of the things that they would have wished to create in this lifetime, that they might also have in the third day bardo. But it is more at the human level and not the higher self and soul level. Some people experience very traumatic things in their past life experience and don't really talk about that. And some people don't sense that, and they experience the beautiful part at the upper part, the upper chakras, should they go all the way up the column to the top of the head, but they never go out, because it is well known from their soul that this is not their time to pass. So people think they're actually going out the tunnel of death, but they are not. They're going up another side channel, up alongside the central column, alongside the death bardo, that you actually go out of the body with at death. And that is actually an experience that their soul is giving them, because they often come back with a renewed sense of a purpose. So there is actually a purpose in a past life, in a near-death experience. It is the soul's ability to give someone a renewed sense of purpose in a life. And they were never going to pass, and they never went out the death bardo. And this is something that's good to clarify for people and for any physicians, doctors, researchers, or healers who will eventually listen to this channeling, because this is going to go out on the public web. So that is what the near-death experience is about. Okay, so moving on to that third day, or moving back to that third day in the death bardo, when that light comes and those feelings and those floods of feelings come, which can also happen to you in your everyday meditations and healings. It's another channel pathway where they come. But the ones in the death bardo are profound and the highest ones you will ever experience. And eventually, humans evolve till you have that in your everyday waking state in consciousness. And that is part of evolution. But for about the next, could be 50,000 years, humans will experience that in the passing on the third day of the death bardo. And you will have that, and you will find the pathway to soul and higher self out to the greater field, where you reunite with all souls, and you are part of a creational process while you are there. And you are used as an instrument of evolution at the soul level. And it is the angelic kingdoms and the archangelic kingdoms and what are called the Arachai, which are large groups of archangels that work the national level, national consciousness of groups, all work with that level now. And it is going to be for a long, long time that they stay out in the greater field working with the soul group consciousnesses. And eventually they do come back and come closer to humans again and are perceived. But for a long, long, long time of the history of the earth, they remain way out there doing profound and evolutionary work for the creative source as they get their instructions in an annual way to do that work. For all creation is connected, and this is part of the picture we are trying to give you of death, that you end your individual life and you become part of a great process of creation of this planet. For you are meshed in this planet in magnificent and creational ways, such that how you progress is how the planet progresses. As you change your consciousness, both individually and collectively, you change the creational level of the earth, and you change the ability for what happens on the earth. Everything from the trees, to the animals, to the minerals, to the creational processes within the earth, all get changed as humans change. And your ability to change the weather, to change the, you're also worried about that level up at that periphery of the planet where the Earth's chakra opens up and closes, that level where pollution is sensed. We're forgetting the name of that, but that's okay. It's that upper atmospheric level, and everyone's so worried about that, and the electromagnetic storms coming in. Half of that membrane is controlled by the Supreme Being and the field level, creational level that we are speaking about. And it is postured based on the magnetics coming from the sun. And this information has been spoken about by some other channelers. So part of what goes on in that field, that energy, the electromagnetic protective barrier of the earth, part of it is controlled by the archangelic, Arachai, and Supreme Being forces based on what comes from the sun in its spiritual component, and part of it is controlled by human consciousness. Isn't that amazing? Your pollution that you worry about has nothing to do with thinning that atmosphere of the electromagnetic solar radiation waves. There's a name for it, we can't remember, but you know what we are talking about, because humans have talked more and more about this as they fear of some of the things going on the earth right now, like large storms, tornadoes, hurricanes, tsunamis, earthquakes, all the things that humans are getting fearful about. And these things will increase whenever the solar electromagnetics increase onto the earth, and then they will calm down. But they are never actually destructive things. Think of it as the earth cleaning its body. And humans can actually intend that they do not come near human cultures. And in the future, there will be large groups of people who do this work. They will get together, and they will you'll still have your web, and they will get together in various ways, and they will intend the benevolence of the storms and earth events, and they will keep areas safe, because that is an ability that you all have. And the science eventually will prove this. And the science for that is just beginning to bud and come out. And it will come out in the lifetime of this individual, which means in the next 40 years they will come out. So that is an amazing thing. So we're just sprinkling you with some other ideas so that you understand how profound your creation and co-creation is on the earth, but that you also are in a system that has aspects of it that work more closely with the creative source and what we call the directives of the Supreme Being. The codes of creation that come through annually to say, well, this is a good time to do that. And they stir things up, and they engage different systems that are in the earth that eventually you will understand and learn about. And these things go forward, and evolution goes forward, and humans change. So it's a cooperative system. As you change consciousness, it affects certain things that change at the higher levels. As new directives come in at the higher levels, it changes certain things that eventually affect humans at this more body and material dimensional level. It's like a two-way radio back back and forth, back and forth. So, by the time you go back out to the greater field, you are in your magnificence as a soul, because your soul is mostly magnificent and near perfect. For how else could you have come here? Because you actually came here to this planet to be part of this system. And this is a unique system, for free will was enmeshed into this system for the first time compared to any enlightened planet. And this information has also been brought forward. And we wish to elaborate on that a little bit more. Because what is free will? From your human perspective, the free will is the ability to choose to align with the greater good or not. From the field where all souls are, and the angels, archangels, and Arachai work, and the directives of the Supreme Being come in through an annual cycle into the solar system and into Earth and into all the planets of this universe. This is the ability to work with all of creation and all universes for the greater good of all. And that is something that has never been built into an earthly system before, because the evolution of that is now here. So this is a very unique planet, which is why it is way out, far away from other highways of interdimensional beings and those who travel in spaceships, which is true. And you see these on Earth, and many have seen them, including this one. So this is pretty well known and accepted that there are space travelers that visit Earth, but they are not allowed to interfere. And any in the past, during pre-evolutionary stages that did interfere, are mostly gone and have been moved out. And there's only 2 small groups that will be moved out in the future that are left out of approximately 12. And those groups are not to be bothered with, for that is a dimension that humans don't have to worry about. And we're just saying that for all of those who get very carried away with the alien conspiracy theory stuff. Not a truth in this planetary system. Old bleeds from either galactic past lives or from memory of running into them in early incarnational lives on Earth. But most humans have absolutely no connection or access to the last 2 groups that are in the interdimensional realms of this planetary system. So there is nothing to fear on this planet. Nothing. It is a beautiful, pure planet with a new experimental addition of free will, which is succeeding tremendously beyond any expectation. And the best way we've been able to sum it up is what it took us 250 million years, you have done in 250,000 years. It took us that long in our own planet to reach the stage you are in now, going from very primitive to very evolved. So you should feel very, very happy. Despite what you see out in your world right now, you should be very happy on how well it's going on Earth. And that's what we have to say about that. The final thought we wish to leave you with regarding death is that even the death system changes in evolution. Now, the best way we can relate this is through sleep. Some older channelers and spiritual information exchangers for all information, whether it's from a being such as a Pleiadian mother of sound or a angel or archangel from the past. Some people, there are a few people on the earth who still have communion with that, and that is purposeful. There's always a channel open for that, left through all of creation on earth to that realm, and that's because it's needed. And there's reasons for that, which we won't go into here, but there is sleep, and those long ago channelers used to call sleep the little death. So you sleep and you get rest and succor, and you come back mostly refreshed, but sometimes with more worry if you're working through something. And sleep gets a little more complex and irregular as you go into your senior years. And a lot of people feel like it's because of all the worry and all the fear. It's not. It's because their souls are actually working harder at night. And we'll explain that in a minute, as well as we're going to explain the Christ impulse. So sleep is considered the little death, but you always know you come back and you awaken, unless you're one of the unusual cases where you pass in your sleep, which, wow, from our perspective, that's like the perfect way to go, because you're already with the Creator and with your soul at night in your astral body, working at beautiful realms if you're a senior. And we're going to talk about that in a sec. So we just want to relate that in the future, death actually becomes like sleep. You just simply know you're gone and you're coming back. It's not as much of a complete wipeout of memory and of knowing like it is now. And that will evolve for you all as humans on the earth in approximately 75 to 100,000 years, which seems like a long way off, but from our perspective, it's not. So it all depends on what consciousness you have, what that perspective is. So 50,000 years, there's setups that are being put in place in this time frame that'll all come online for everyone. And those are a great step, and those carry you to that next 100,000, another 50,000 years, and then you run into that sleep thing, and that evolves. And by only 50,000 more years, you're in that sleep thing. As vague as that sounds, there are some people that are going to hear this, they're going to understand and cognize what we are talking about. So there are many different levels of consciousness that listen to these channels, and we throw in little things for everyone. So if you don't understand that, don't worry about it. You will down the road in your futures. And we said futures as plural. So one way to think of death is that it is just a short sleep until you incarnate again. And eventually you will have that consciousness of it that way with no fear. So the fear of death, as some other channeler said, is really only about 3.5 seconds, and then it's gone. It's just that final feeling when the breath of the human switches over to the breath of the soul, which is different. It's a different type of a respiratory system, and it uses a different element than the oxygen you use in the body. And that is the fear that most all people feel. It's the waning of that breath before it transitions into the other breath. And then you're in the other breath, and you're with soul forces, higher self, and it's different. And you're in the bardo, and you're going through those things. Okay. So, the other thing we would like to talk about the changes in sleep for seniors and about the Christ impulse, is that these forces increase the longer you are on the earth. Now, why? This one was told long ago, in her 20s, when she began meditating with a particular teacher. The teacher said that most people's spiritual path and the work they came here to do at the level of the soul begins after 60. And she was like, okay. And she's looked at that through life. And by the time someone's 60, they're usually done with their raising a family, whether they be a man or a woman. They're sometimes maybe still working, but their interests begin to change. And they begin to get a little more interested in either not being involved in drama and stressful things, or they actually begin to get more interested in the Creator in connection to the divine. And when you go to spiritual events and meditation groups, a lot of times they're mostly composed of seniors for these reasons. So in your 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 100s, and it'll continue to grow, the lifespan of humans as you evolve on the earth, as it is referenced in the biblical times, that people lived thousands of years, and they did. You eventually will grow to live thousands of years in a body. As strange as that may sound, and I'm sure many of you are going right now going, oh no, that would be not a great thing. But you'll be in a different consciousness and a different type of body by then. And we're talking millions of years. And so that's millions of years in the future. So the senior years are a metaphor in a way for evolution as of a planetary system. So you start to become interested more in different things, and many seniors begin the search for God within. And so the soul, let's talk about the level of what's going on at the higher self and the soul, because it's very similar to what's going on in the death bardo. The higher self and soul begin to feel the golden and benevolent akashas more, the one we spoke about where all the good deeds are. And the soul begins to feel more of the soul out in the greater field, where it is the greater connections and the purity of soul in its mastery. And this is part of the design, that these things come in stronger into the human through the life cycle of a lifetime. So these feelings are what drive the human through the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, and the 100s to maybe start exploring more or reading different things or changing or not. There are some lifetimes where nothing happens. But in many people, there are lifetimes where these impulses are beginning to be felt. And this is what we call the friction of the soul. There's an article on the Wonder of Human Design website under the Wisdom Channels page where you can read an article called The Friction of the Soul, if you wish to contemplate that more afterwards. It is where the soul brings in impulses that are higher, that create a little friction in the human and cause them to want to search. And it is purposeful. So it is true that a human's spiritual purpose that they came into in a lifetime does begin after 60. And the tasks and the things they wish to bring forward, or the soul and higher self wish to bring forward, happen in those ages, as it does in the third day of the death bardo. So, how does the Christ impulse play into healing, into the third day of the death bardo, and into seniors? And what is the Christ impulse? Every planetary system has a large, overarching, whether you want to think of it as a being, a consciousness, an evolutionary force, a combination of many, many, many factors that create a consciousness. It's a very difficult thing to describe at the consciousness you are now, but in that 150 years from now window that we spoke about, because we did say 150 years and we did say 150,000 years. We referenced two different time frames. That will be well understood. So the Christ is not a religion. It is an energetic force. And in healing, it is often seen as, it used to be seen as white light with sparkles. In the new energy coming in, it is white light with gold light with sparkles, because the Christ force impulse has gotten upgraded in the great shift that you were in. And the Christ impulse or force is used in healing, in certain types of healing. There's a divine feminine component. So there's a universal life component and a divine feminine life component to the Christ force. And one obviously would work the etheric nature, and one would obviously work the astral nature. One would work more the spirit body, and one would work more the heart field and the high heart field nature. And the Christ force is also present in the third day of the death bardo, coming in from the soul's forces of the field. And that is actually the light that comes in. It comes in through the Christ impulse. So although there was a master called Jesus Christ, the reason the Christ, which means the anointed one, was beginning to be used for the first time was because that master happened to bring in pathways into the etheric, into the earth, to prepare for the Christ to be seen in the death bardo. So the Christ impulse of light was always in the death bardo, but the Christ impulse of the healing forces of the Christ are now coming into the death bardo in the great shift. And that is going to be happening over the next 40 years. As profound as that may seem. So the Christ impulse is like a remembrance of home, a light of the pathway back to the souls in the greater field, an impulse used in healing, and an impulse used in healing in the death bardo coming, and an impulse in being able to know what is the right path. So the Christ impulse is an evolutionary force. And eventually you will find a new name for this, and the word Christ will be dropped away because of the religious connotations that it has to a particular religious group. But for now, it is the most universal word that is used in the consciousness of humans who have worked with this energy and healing. And that word will change in about 50 years with new science that shows something new that is percolating and coming in now, and will be known by everyone in the public arena in about 5 years. That work will come forward and will be exposed, and all people on the earth will know of it, because your ability to communicate news globally will increase more and more over the next 5 years, because the systems you have created are part of the, well, you can think of it as a metaphor for becoming more into unity consciousness as souls. Everything you create with your technology is actually a metaphor for something that is happening spiritually. Isn't that amazing? So this planet will mostly evolve spiritually with people who will remain and keep the spiritual component, and technology and people who will bring in the technology component. And that's a beautiful system to have on a planet, a balance of both. So, and some other people and channels have brought that information in. So the Christ impulse is there in the third day of the death bardo and is increasingly in seniors. That is part of the drive of the search for the God within, the search for spiritual exploration, the search for why did I come and what is my purpose in this lifetime. There is a need and a desire in many to say, what did I really come here to do? I did all that stuff, I had that career, I had that job, but even in the background of that, I had this other impulse that there was something else. And now I have the time, a little bit more time and maybe a little bit less financial stress to explore that a little bit. And I think I'm going to do that. And you will see this more in women, because women have a double loop to the Creator. They have a direct connection through a divine feminine channel right out to the greater field of their souls and the divine intelligence of the Creator. So you will often see this as women, which is why you're going to see women evolve continually from now at the Great Shift until you wrap up your planetary grid and take it to another system like we did ours. You will see women take on more spiritual leadership roles. And this is the very beginning of that resplendence, exaltation, and higher purpose of women beginning to come back. But it was purposefully dormered so that there would be memories in the heart field of women that would then come forward at the time of the Great Shift. And we're going to explain that in another set of channelings coming into a playlist called How to Have a Peaceful Life. And that will be coming in the May-June timeframe. But for now, we're just speaking on death. But everything's connected, so everything percolates forward. So that is why there is this impulse in seniors. And this is why you will often see the people who are out there being authorities or information of high spiritual information will be coming through older people. And we're saying this to many young people who are going to listen to this, because there's a consciousness construct right now that just wants to get rid of the old people, that they're tired of the old people, because they associate the old people with the old consciousness and the corruption and the problems going on. But perhaps you need to rise up beyond that, clear whatever that is in you, or change that consciousness and realize there's a system and there's a reason why that most of the spiritual information of a high nature will be coming through seniors from the age of 60 on. And it'll continue to come more and more through women, as well as the great ideas through corporations are going to more and more come through women. Now, if you're a woman and you have a great idea, we've said this to another group, let it come forward. Don't worry about the glass ceiling. Just share your spiritual wisdom. And the men might pick it up and take credit, and maybe you'll be with a great group and they will give you credit. But don't hold back on these ideas just because of the recognition and those feelings of being frustrated for not having your career evolve as much as it should have because of what they call the glass ceiling or the old consciousness of patriarchy. And there are some women listening that needed to hear that, because there are several of you who have very great ideas. So, we believe we've covered death in a way that you can see it in a different way, and see that there's only that moment of fear with the exchange of the old oxygen system going to some people call it orgon, but there's a level of passing through the bardo. It's actually beyond orgon. It's another type of system, sometimes called the breathless state in some spiritual communities, where the breath ceases to be an outward thing because the soul is doing the breathing at that high level. And that's often used in very profound spiritual work, and most often comes through a woman. And that's why that happens, because some connections and evolutionary upgrades that happen are so profound that the soul is actually being used as an instrument by the angels, archangels, Christ archangels for that evolution. And that's when that system is used, called the breathless state. So we hope that you found some information exchange that inspired you, that made you a little less afraid of death, that made you realize eventually death will be like taking a nap and you wake up and you're in that next incarnation. And that'll be lovely and fun, because you're going to come in with all of your memories of what you were doing and learning, and you will just be having a lot of fun by that stage. There won't be a whole lot of bad karma anymore, because that happens in the evolution of a planet too. The karma becomes instantaneously healed between individuals and groups, and in groups and larger groups. And that's part of the system. And this one has always said, I believe the body is eventually designed to be a self-healing system. And it is. And that's evolution for you. So know that there are wondrous and glorious things ahead. Have no fear. Realize you're just in, you can think of it as a burp of a digestive force in your evolution right now. And the great shift is also a burp. We're going through some difficult digestive issues while we work through things, but there is a better system coming. There is a better evolution coming. There is actually the beginning of a great golden renaissance coming. And the beginning of every great golden renaissance has a lot of upheaval and change. If you look at every great golden renaissance of the past, right before it began, there was a lot of potential wars, a lot of infighting and power struggles. There were a lot of religious clashes, and then it settles down and the Renaissance begins. And you are entering a profound, great golden renaissance. So hold on to those things, be with peace, know you are dearly loved, expect benevolence in all you do, and we bid you adieu. Thank you for listening.